happy day, ERDC team, since I don't know when you guys are going to watch it, morning, afternoon, which day of the week. But so I'm here with Alyssa Armstrong, and we're going to talk about some more ethics today. And my apologies, I know that we're training everyone to the nth degree these days, but some of this stuff is really important. And OPSEC's important, you know, periodically. Ethics are important all the time. So that's why Alyssa and I are going to kind of run through a couple scenarios to help define, you know, some of the 14 principles that deal with ethics and just some of the complexity that comes in when dealing with ethical situations, things that we think, oh no, that'll be just fine. Well, as government employees, some of those things are not quite as upfront as you would think that they are. And one of the favorite people I've had since I became a commander is my ethics advisor, because they can tell me what pitfalls I'm not seeing, and even better, if they get it wrong, I'm still not in trouble. Where if I go do it on my own and I'm in trouble all by myself. So please don't ever hesitate to reach out to your ethics advisor. If you have a question, if you have an invitation to something, if you're not sure how something works, that's okay. Ask them that question. They will give you their legal opinion, and that legal opinion will protect you even if someone later down the line says that that wasn't the right choice. As long as you get a legal opinion that says that what you're doing is ethically okay, you're covered. So we'll run through some scenarios just to give you an idea of, you know, just, again, the complexities of the ethics environment for government employees, because it's much different than in the private sector. So our first scenario that I'm coming to Alyssa for some help. And this is, like I said, I have done this many times as a commander because I get invited to things, I get offered things. So this is a very typical conversation for me to have with one of my ethics counselors. All right, Alyssa.
Yes, ma'am.
So I have an old friend who works for a prohibited source, and they want to invite me to an all expenses paid local golf tournament with an outdoor office picnic on a weekend. I already said I'll love it. You know, they're mixing golf, talking about a little bit of work. There's going to be some high-end food, open bar. All of it's free. And then the famous U-Hops group's going to be performing. And his boss, you know, specifically told me that his boss my friend told me that his boss wanted to specifically invite me because she wanted to talk to me about a couple things that we'd worked on before, you know, to just, I know that she wants to make me happy, and, you know, we've worked together before. And then, you know, also thought, you know, could I take the GOV because it's kind of a government thing, you know, I'm kind of going there a little bit as a use case piece, and then, you know, just kind of working, but kind of spend the afternoon a little too far out of the deal. And because I worked with him, you know, on one of my projects about 6 months ago, so I already know a bunch of those folks. My spouse works there for him still, so, you know, he's going to be going. And, you know, maybe even bring another guest because it's kind of an exclusive invite only kind of thing. So I think it sounds like a great time. I love golfing. I'm all about food. Take the wine. So what do you think?
Well, one of the things that are going to help us solve this question is going to be our 14 general principles for federal employees. And I hope everybody has a copy of that to refer to and familiarize themselves with that. So let's go to the questions about your scenario for scenario one. I'll tell you just about each one of the 14 principles can just be found in your scenario. But we're going to look at this under the gift examination. So the first thing I want to highlight is, what does it mean to be a prohibited source? And an easy way to think about a prohibited source is somebody who's doing business with the government. There are more complicated explanations, but that's kind of a back pocket. So we're going to look at this and see whether or not there would be gifts from a prohibited source to you. And there would be in this case. He's offering you gifts of free golf, free food, free drinks, free entertainment. And also the fact that he invited you to bring a guest means that we're going to have to aggregate the cost of that gift to include both your and your spouse's attendance.
What if my spouse went? Could I go with my spouse's guest?
Not today.
Okay.
Not today. So after we determine that there is a gift being given here, then we start to look for the exceptions or exclusions that might allow you to accept that gift. And if you want to look into those more, those are in 5 CFR 2635-204. And some of the exceptions have to do with being given for a personal relationship. That would be an exception. Or if it's less than $20, that is another exception. There are several in there, but unfortunately, none of those apply to this situation. So, like you asked, could you take leave and go on personal time? Could you go with your spouse? That's our fourth question. And the answer is no, that even things we do in our personal time are still governed by the ethics rules. So it's still a gift whether you are in your official capacity or not. So the gift rules do apply. And since there's no exceptions or exclusions here, you wouldn't be able to accept that. And something else I want to highlight is not just the technical rules of the ethics regulations, but also the appearance aspect. We want to make sure that we always are, not only are we impartial, but we appear that way to the public. We certainly don't want there to look like there's favoritism or misuse of position, or that you're getting something from a private sector because of your official position. So I would encourage you to keep those aspects in mind. But let's take it a little more generally. Is there any issue with a friend who works for a prohibited source inviting you to an event? And the answer generally is no, but like many ethics questions, there are so many nuances to this question that did become a problem, even though generally it wouldn't be a problem for you to socialize with your friends here. You also asked me if you could take the government vehicle to the picnic. And that's not an issue that we see in our office a ton, because I don't think we have that many government vehicles like some other agencies. But the answer is there would be an issue, and you could not take the government vehicle to this event. You must use official government vehicles for official time and only for official duties. And that is a real hot button ethics issue. So even though I think we don't have that issue a lot, because I don't think we have that many government vehicles, if any of you have questions about when that is appropriate, please don't hesitate to call the Office of Counsel, because we'd be glad to work with it through you. I'd hate to see anybody get in trouble over something so simple to avoid. So let's talk about the prohibited source boss, who specifically sought you out to invite you. That is not allowed. That boss did not seek you out and invite you because of your long-standing personal relationship with them. They sought you out because of your official position and the fact that you were working on some projects together. So we want to make sure that we always avoid those kind of conflicts of interest or misuse of position. So the fact that this is an invitation only, an exclusive event, also presents problems. We as federal employees, and this is something that we do see arise with speaking engagements and other events, we want to make sure that we're always as transparent and open to the public as possible. So we want to make sure that we are supporting public events so that we avoid the appearance of endorsement, favoritism, or preferential treatment. There's also an appearance of impropriety if we are seeking out contractors and allowing them to have access to our employees that other contractors or prohibited sources do not have. So one of the, we mentioned this a few minutes ago, but one of the things that I would ask you to do is to take into consideration value-based decision-making when it comes to your ethics analysis. So that means even if I told you that you were allowed to attend in some capacity and accept this stuff, you need to ask yourself whether or not that's something that would appear as a conflict to the public, and whether or not it is worth attending if it gives that impression. So that is our last peg in our analysis of gifts, is whether or not, even in spite of everything else, and you can't accept it, is it something that you should do? And our last question 10, is, are there any restrictions for you that you work for the prohibited source and that your spouse works there now? And the answer is yes. Your spouse's interest will always be imputed to you. So that's something to keep in mind. If your spouse does work for a prohibited source, that's something you should probably be discussing with the Office of Counsel before you accept invitations or before you work on anything that prohibited source is involved in. And now we can go to scenario 2.
So real quick before scenario 2, as we were talking, I remember some advice that I've gotten, which is when I'm offered something, I have to always think, am I being offered that because someone wants Teresa Schlosser to go? Or am I being offered that because someone wants the commander to go? And if it's someone wants me to go because it's a personal thing, then it's usually no problem, as long as the perceptions are okay. But if someone wants the commander to go, then that gets into a different category sometimes, particularly with prohibited source, because then it's not a gift to me, it's a gift to the command, and I have to really think about those things much more clearly and closely. If professional commitment and offer, then that's a little different from a friend offering something.
That's absolutely right, ma'am. You want to make sure that you're not being offered something because of your position in the government or because there's any expectation of your action, you taking action on part of the person who invited you, or inaction. That is a great way to think about invitations.
All right, so scenario 2. So we have so I've got a question for you for one of our employees. They were approached by a prohibited source that's having a local conference and would like one of our contracting employees to go there to be a speaker. The source is willing to give her free admission for the entire conference, not just the day of her speech, but it actually kind of turns out the conference is free to all federal employees and all military folks, so maybe that's not a problem. But the prohibited source would also like to have a photo and a bio with the official title and position of the contracting employee and plans to use it at the event and market, advertise, kind of publicize the event. And then the source also plans to thank her by giving her a plaque, a book worth about $15, and a $25 store gift card. So, and then kind of the last question is, what if the contracting employee happens to be working on a competitive procurement where the prohibited source is also an offerer?
Those are great questions. To go into the questions for scenario 2. I know it seems like we have crammed a lot into the scenarios, and that is, I just want to tell y'all at the midpoint here, that is so that you don't have to take any additional ethics training this year so we can satisfy your ethics requirement for 2020. We are hitting upon all the issues in the 4 scenarios. So a speaker at a non-federal entity event. Again, almost all of the 14 principles apply. And these 14 principles should be governing how we conduct ourselves every day. The first question is, may the contracting employee be a speaker at a prohibited source event? And the answer to that is yes. There is a speaker exclusion there. So you could do that. You could be a speaker at the event. Make a government employee attend the entire event for free. In this case, they may. A government employee may attend for free on the day of their speech.
Since it's free for federal employees.
It's free for all federal employees, then they may accept that way. Another issue where this arises is 31-1353, 31 U.S.C. 1353, which a lot of people will recognize as a Form 48 that comes to the Office of Counsel. And that is to request that the government accept the gift of free attendance to an event. So I just want to highlight that here. We get a ton of those every year, and that's going to look for is the Form 48 on the ERDC internet if you're being offered free attendance at an event. And you want to coordinate that with the Office of Counsel, and we'll be glad to help you do that. So question number 4, may the government employee accept the gift? Well, she may accept some of the gifts. She may not accept all 3. So she may accept the plaque because it's of nominal value, and she may accept the book because it's less than $20, but you may not accept a $25 gift card. So question number 5 is, may the government employee take the government vehicle or reimbursable taxi ride or share ride to the event? And the answer to that is yes. If you're speaking in your official duty, the attending is official duty, and you may use the government vehicle. What happens if the employee accidentally accepts the $25 gift card and takes it back to the office? What can you do then? Well, you have a couple options. You may destroy it, you may return it, or you may pay $25 to the person who gave it to you. So my favorite example of this is apparently at the division, they regularly get a gift of a ham to one of the employees there, and so they bring it and share it in the office in order to get rid of it. I've not seen any hams at ERDC, but if you get a ham, you should not accept it, and you should have to ask the council what to do with it.
Or share it.
Yes, or share it. That's what we will tell you to do. But generally you may not accept gifts. But what about the photo and bio they want to use? And we have this arise pretty often. So they can use that as part of your official title while you're speaking, but they may not use you as a tool to recruit attendees or for promotion or marketing. And this is another case where, what about our value-based decision and our value-based analysis? And this is where we would do that. A reasonable person with knowledge of the relevant facts think that your integrity or impartiality have been compromised if you accept this gift. I'm not sure that they would think that you were impartial if you accepted the plaque or $15 book, but that's the analysis that you want to do. You want to ask whether or not it would be worth accepting the book or the plaque. Factors that would encourage you not to do that would be a high market value. You also want to analyze the timing of the donation, see if it was there to try to influence your official action. And the Office of Counsel is also willing to go through that analysis with you to help you decide if you need any assistance in that. Let's go on to scenario number 3.
WAG. I like WAG. Widely attended gathering. So this one again is complicated, so stick with us. All right, so there's a prohibited source who's having a one-day outdoor Saturday event at a local resort where there will be a reception, speakers, food, and wine tasting. Again, you may know I'm into food and wine tasting. The cost is $230. Sponsors invited, local commanded deputy, and my spouse or guest to attend for free. The event is open to all members who are drawn from the public, city, local, state, and federal level, and the private sector. 1,000 people are expected to attend, and the sponsor has no pending matter before me right now. Some of the invited entities work with USACE, so going there to interact would be really in USACE's best interest and would be beneficial. And the sponsors also invited attendees to bring spouses and guests as well. There'll be an opening reception with attendees can mingle and talk, and there'll be booths for the food and wine tasting with tables with about 12 set up. In the middle of the event, so awkward moment, middle of the event, the contractor attending the event comes up and wants to talk to me about specifics of an ongoing contract. So can I go to the event, and what should I do with that contract? So first I'm going to describe a little bit about what a widely attended gathering is, because everybody may not know. It's another exception that may apply. If an event qualifies as a widely attended gathering or a WAG, and attendance at the event has been authorized under the gift rules by the agency, you may accept the offer for attendance. An agency ethics official will consider several factors to determine whether or not this is a WAG, such as, is the employee's attendance in the interest of the agency? Does the employee's interest outweigh the concern that the employee may be or may appear to be improperly influenced in the performance of your official duties? Does the donor have interests that may be substantially affected by the employee's official duties? And lastly, is someone other than the spouse sponsored the event and the cost of the employee's attendance? That's kind of interesting. Think about that. If you're going to let's say, going to the same conference, did SAME invite you, or did another contractor offer to pay your attendance to attend that event? That may not be something that is always crystal clear to people in the beginning, but it's something that will need to be analyzed. And a WAG also has to be approved by your supervisor in writing. But let's get through the questions here. There's a little background for you. And on all these issues, you can find great notes on the Office of on SOTO's website. I should have that for y'all. Maybe I'll include that in the email. But you can find some great examples of different scenarios there. Again, the 14 principles are in play here. What rules must be reviewed to determine if the commander may accept the offer of free attendance? It is the gift rules and the WAG exceptions. So in this scenario, may the commander attend? Likely yes, but we're going to need to go through more of the details. So you asked if you can take a government vehicle. And in this case, you cannot, because you'll be going in your personal capacity, so you cannot take the government vehicle. But you may take your spouse with you, because others in attendance will also be accompanied by a spouse or guest. So in this case, there's also a pretty expensive cost factor here. Is the $230 cost factor something to consider? And the answer is yes, but only as we're making the widely attended gathering decision and we're analyzing it.
from that standpoint. So here, if the sponsor extends the invitation, there's no need to scrutinize the number of attendees or the amount. But if that contractor invited you to attend, then there would have to be more than 100 people expected to attend, and the aggregate cost for you and your spouse must be $415 or less. Another thing that we look at when we analyze a WAG is whether or not there'll be a wide variety of views expressed there, or if there will just be one viewpoint expressed. So that's something that wasn't included here in the answer, but something else to think about. What do you do? Our last question for scenario 3. What do you do as a local commander when a contractor wants to talk about a specific contract? And we have this happen fairly often in Vicksburg because, and I'm sure it happens in the other locations as well, but we do have that happen here where somebody will ask about a procurement. And what you do there is you just say, I'm sorry, I can't answer those questions. Please contact the contracting officer. And you politely walk away.
That's usually the truth because I usually have no idea what contract they want to talk to me about.
That's true. And a lot of times at ERDC, a contract may not even be here at ERDC. It may be for the benefit of ERDC, but the contracting officer may be somewhere else. So now we're moving on to our last scenario, which is scenario 4, gifts between employees.
Okay, and spoiler alert, this one is really complicated. So we'll walk through it though. All right, so we have gifts between employees, and I've seen this one come up. This is so common in the military because we move all the time. So some of these are different from what I've seen in the military just because our gifts are pretty direct where we don't have the civilian employee element to it. So we got 3 different gifts going out to employees, and Melissa's going to walk you through how to determine whether these are okay or not. We have 3 military program supervisors. One is retiring, one is being promoted within the chain of command, and one is leaving USACE to go work at the EPA. He also wants to throw parties to include collecting money for gifts and food or for bringing food. And I want to know what the rules are for each of the different people leaving. So the person who's retiring is working personally and substantially on the Camp Swampy project, also in Mississippi known as Camp Shelby. He's speaking with Camp Swampy contractor about a job. They have to file a recusal. Then after accepting the job, but still as a federal employee, he asks around the office on behalf of the contractor for folks to talk to the contractor about the project. And he can't talk to the contractor about it anymore. Is this okay? And after he's retired, when may he represent the contractor back to USACE on the Camp Swampy project? How about representing the contractor to USACE on a different contract, unrelated to Camp Swampy, but he did not work on either while he was on terminal leave or after he officially retired? So I think we should probably just hit Swampy first, and then we'll go to the other 2 employees. Yeah, so we're going to go on to the answers for scenario 4, but this is a complicated situation that does arise here. So the first thing I want everybody to know is if you're considering employment with someone who does business with the government, once you're considering that and take any step towards that, you need to recuse yourself, and you need to have a discussion with your supervisor about getting your written recusal in place. This is especially important whenever we're talking about CORs or evaluating a BAA or any type of contract action. The first thing you need to do is stop yourself and recuse with your supervisor, because that will get you into a lot of criminal issues as well. So that's where when you're thinking about a contractor, go ahead and come to the office of counsel early, because we can also do an analysis for you that may save you time, because you may already be prohibited from working for that contractor or for doing the specific things that contractor anticipates you're going to do when you get there. And the last thing you want to do is find yourself having resigned for this job and unable to accept the job that you've pursued. So let's go through. There's a lot in here. Again, refer to your handy 14 principles, print them out on your desk. So let's talk about the party rules. There are different rules depending on whether or not you're retiring in the agency or if you're promoted within a group. We're going to have a different analysis there. So let's start with someone who's retiring or leaving the agency. This would be considered occasions of personal significance. And this would be marriage, illness, or birth of adoption of a child, or some examples of that.
And all of those things you'll notice terminate, the examples that I've given have terminated the supervisory relationship. So again, significance would be retirement, resignation, or transfer. And those are going to have a different analysis. So you may give a gift of more than $10 and the supervisor may accept it if it is an appropriate gift. I don't know who defines appropriate gift, but if it's an appropriate gift. You may also give a group gift, but it may not exceed $300 if the group contains a subordinate. And then you also cannot combine groups. The cost for food and refreshment is not part of the $300. It may be solicited separately. You may solicit voluntary contributions, but they must always be voluntary and they must be nominal. You cannot pressure people to give money for a gift. For a person that is, we went over a person that is retiring or going to the EPA may get a personal gift, but if someone is moving up within that chain of command, then the appropriate gift would be just food and refreshments within the immediate office. There may not be an actual group gift. So let's look at the person retiring and applying to work for Camp Swampy Contractor. Do they need a refusal? Everybody should know the answer to this, and the answer is yes. Negotiating for employment about a matter that you worked on that impacts the financial interest of that contractor, that constitutes a conflict of interest. And you need to see 18 U.S.C. 208. And you do not want to run afoul of that. So please contact the Office of Counsel whenever you're planning that retirement. Question 4, may a retiring employee ask around the office for people to talk to that Camp Swampy contractor? The answer to that is no. Again, there is an actual conflict of interest there under 18 U.S.C. 205, and that is a misuse of your position and a misuse of the public office for private gain. And also using insider, there's also the potential for using the insider information and misusing your official time. Question 5, as you're retired, may the retiree represent Camp Swampy back to the government? And that may be a lot of what contractors have in mind for you, that you work for the government and now you can come work for them and you can work on this project and coordinate with the government because you know everybody there. And that is absolutely a no. There's a lifetime ban on representing back to the government on things that you worked on while you were here. And we can go into that. That gets harder the higher up in the organization that you get because more items are imputed to you, but we'll be glad to work through that with you. Number 6, how about working on a different contract? Well, that's going to be a fact-specific scenario that we're going to need to walk through with you. Did you personally and substantially work on that matter? If the answer is no, then it may be okay. You may not have a ban. Also, for our military personnel, there's some additional restrictions there on terminal leave. So we have gone through 4 scenarios today that that will cover all of your training for 2020 if you're a financial disclosure, as well as the Hatch Act. You do have to take the Hatch Act too, but now you won't have to take any more ethics training for us right now.
Which is good. So again, apologize for kind of the fire hose of the scenarios, but as Alyssa said, this way, you know, it's a twofer. You get to listen to us and you get to get out of any future training for the ethics training year this year. And some of it, I'm okay with how complicated the scenarios were, because oftentimes the scenario will be just that complicated, particularly with the retiring employee. That I've seen employees that they get offered jobs with their contractors, you know, regularly, because contractors recognize that we have great employees. And then there's sometimes the ulterior motive of, you know, getting those connections and the rest. But you have to be really careful with those, because as Alyssa said, you don't want to resign from one job and then find out you legally cannot take the next job. So at any point that you think you might have an ethical dilemma, you know, bring it up to Office Counsel. They would much rather help you ahead of time than try to undo whatever mess has been created. So don't hesitate to contact them with any of these issues, because it's really important that we maintain that impartiality as the government, that we don't have a perception that we're doing things improperly or with favoritism, because that's just not the right way to go about things.
Yes, ma'am. On the last slide, you'll see we included our phone numbers and our email addresses for myself, as well as Brian Lynch at Searle and Gary Pasternak at Creel. And any of our attorneys will be glad to assist you. And if you are considering post-employment but not ready to ask for an opinion yet, we also have a revolving door handout that will help you be aware of the issues that you may face pursuing employment.
Perfect. So thank you all for your time. Have a wonderful and ethical day.